Hello, everyone. Today, I'd like to share another deeply moving story with you, set against the tumultuous backdrop of World War II. It's a tale that takes us deep into the heart of occupied Athens, where the echoes of ancient history meet the brutal realities of modern conflict. Titled The Silent Dig, this narrative immerses us in the life of a young archaeologist who finds an unexpected and perilous battleground within the city's ancient past. What happens when the very objects of history become a secret weapon and the desperate act of preserving the past becomes a fight for the future? This story explores themes of shattered family bonds, raw emotion, enduring love for heritage and humanity, and the profound, isolating sense of loneliness that war can inflict. I hope Anatoly's journey resonates with you as much as it does with me. The Silent Dig. The vast, cool halls of the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, once vibrant with the lively chatter of curious tourists and the eager whispers of students, now echoed only with the scuff of my worn boots and the distant, muffled rumble of war. I, Anatoly, 28 years old, an archaeologist whose hands had always been accustomed to the delicate dance of a brush and the precise scrape of a trowel, now found them calloused and scarred by far rougher labor. Each carefully replaced artifact on its pedestal, each whispered lecture delivered to empty air, amplified the profound loneliness that had settled deep in my bones, a cold more pervasive than the ancient marble I revered. Before the war, my life had been a meticulous, joyous excavation of history, brimming with the quiet thrill of discovery. My father, a gruff but brilliantly intuitive civil engineer, would often visit my digs, his presence a sturdy anchor in the shifting sands of the past. He'd share his profound love for the architectural ingenuity of the ancients, his eyes gleaming as he traced the lines of a ruined temple. My mother, a warm, vivacious woman who taught history at the local gymnasium, would fill our apartment with lively, spirited discussions about art and literature. Her laughter, a bright, clear melody that chased away any shadows. My younger sister, Thalia, a spirited girl with boundless curiosity and eyes that shone with wonder, would eagerly join me on museum visits, her small fingers tracing the contours of ancient sculptures, her imagination soaring with dreams of faraway myths. The love in our home was expressed not in grand pronouncements, but in shared passions, in spirited intellectual exchanges that often lasted late into the night, and in the unwavering certainty of our family's bond, a vibrant mosaic of intellect and deep affection. I can still recall the dry, earthy scent of newly unearthed pottery, the smooth, cool feel of ancient bronze against my skin, and the comforting, chaotic warmth of our shared meals, a symphony of voices and ideas. These were the priceless artifacts of my past, now tragically shattered and scattered by the cruel, indifferent machinery of war. Then, without warning, the Germans marched into Athens, a cold gray tide that swallowed our sun-drenched city whole. My father, too old for the brutal front lines, but unwilling to simply wait, had joined the city's desperate civilian defense efforts, working tirelessly, until he, like so many others, tragically succumbed to starvation in the unforgiving grip of the first brutal winter. His vibrant spirit slowly extinguished. My mother, her once bright eyes slowly dimming under the harsh occupation, had been taken by typhus months later, leaving me and Delia utterly alone in the chilling silence of our apartment. Thalia, weakened by hunger and fear, had tried to flee with neighbors, hoping to reach a safer village. But word came back that the convoy she was on had been intercepted. She was never seen again. The once magnificent, intricately woven structure of our family life had crumbled, leaving gaping, aching voids that no amount of historical knowledge, no ancient wisdom could ever fill. I clung to my work at the museum, one of the few places still permitted to operate, albeit under the cold, constant eye of strict German oversight. It was a strange, precarious existence, a constant tightrope walk between preservation and peril. My days were spent overseeing the inventory of invaluable collections, and far more importantly, the clandestine hiding of priceless artifacts, sculptures, pottery, and ancient manuscripts that the Germans intended to relocate to Berlin, to plunder for their own perverse glorification. Every night after the German overseers had finally left their heavy boots echoing into the empty street like a closing tomb, I would meticulously move volumes, secreting them behind false walls I had painstakingly designed and built, into cunningly constructed hidden compartments, or even deep within the museum's vast, rarely accessed, catacomb-like storage. Areas where the air was thick with history and dust. This was my quiet war, fought not with guns, but with dust and ancient stones, driven by a fierce, burning loyalty to the heritage of my people, to the very soul of Greece. The constant anxiety of discovery, the cold, paralyzing fear of a sudden, brutal inspection, was a sharp blade of emotion that never dulled, always pricking at my nerves, making every shadow a potential threat. My only tenuous connection to the outside world, beyond the immediate, suffocating danger of my subversive work, was forged through a shared, silent ritual with a young German officer, Dr. Hans Richter. Richter was ostensibly an overseer assigned to ensure no problematic cultural items remained in Athens. But unlike the other officers, he possessed a genuine, almost reverent appreciation for Greek culture. He was a scholar himself, I could tell, his thin, elegant fingers often tracing the lines of ancient vases or poring over rare, forbidden manuscripts with a quiet intensity. Sometimes his eyes would meet mine across the silent hall, and in that fleeting moment I saw not an enemy, but a shared melancholy, a flicker of something profoundly human, a silent acknowledgement of the tragedy unfolding around us. He would occasionally leave small, untranslated German philosophy texts on my desk, carefully chosen excerpts hinting at ideas of preservation and legacy of eternal truths. I, in return, would leave a carefully chosen, equally subversive Greek poem, an ode to freedom or resilience, placed subtly on a display case, a silent, dangerous dialogue, a fragile lifeline forged in shared vulnerability and intellectual defiance, but of mutual respect and a desperate clinging to the beauty of human creation in a world that sought so brutally to destroy it. One bitter winter afternoon, the museum was unusually, eerily empty, amplifying the oppressive silence. A stern, high-ranking SS officer, his uniform impeccably sharp and menacing, arrived unexpectedly, accompanied by a small squad of heavily armed soldiers. Their sudden, chilling presence filled the quiet halls with an almost palpable tension, like a storm gathering. They had received an anonymous tip. They stated with cold precision that valuable pieces were being secretly hidden in the museum. My heart pounded, a frantic drum, against my ribs, threatening to burst through my chest. I saw Richter's face, pale and grim, his usual composure utterly shattered, his eyes wide with alarm. He looked at me, his gaze holding a desperate, silent warning, a plea for understanding, a shared terror. Panic surged through me, a cold, sickening wave that threatened to drown me. The hidden chamber beneath the mosaic of Dionysus, the precious gold artifacts, the ancient jewels, the irreplaceable scrolls. I was utterly, terrifyingly alone in this moment of impossible choice, the fate of invaluable history resting entirely on my shoulders. But then, as my eyes met Richter's across the vast hall, I saw a flicker of something I couldn't quite name, a plea, a desperate strategy, a desperate will to help. He gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod towards the less significant Roman sculpture wing, an area filled with less historically crucial pieces, away from the true, invaluable Greek treasures I had worked so hard to conceal. Instinct, sharpened by years of navigating ancient ruins and by the raw desperation of the moment, took over. I began to move quickly, my voice surprisingly steady despite the violent tremor in my hands, calling out to the menacing SS officer, "Perhaps you will find the most convenient pieces for shipment in the Roman collections. Herr Oberleutnant, I managed, feigning a helpful, almost eager demeanor. They are often overlooked, but quite sturdy for travel, I assure you. I started walking purposefully towards the far side of the museum, the Roman wing, my steps echoing loudly in the tense silence, trying to appear cooperative. The SS officer, clearly looking for an easy, satisfying target for his suspicion and wanting to avoid a prolonged, difficult search, followed my lead, his heavy boots echoing ominously on the polished floors. Richter lingered for a moment, his gaze fixed intently on me, a silent, unasked question in his eyes, before finally, reluctantly, following his superior, his face a mask of carefully controlled neutrality, betraying nothing. The search was long and humiliating, the soldiers haphazardly inspecting less valuable Roman busts, casually knocking over pedestals, but they found nothing truly incriminating. The museum, though bruised and scarred by their invasive presence, had protected its deepest secrets. As the SS officer finally left, his angry shouts echoing into the distance, his mission unfulfilled, I felt a wave of profound, shaking relief mixed with a chilling understanding of just how close we had come to utter ruin. I looked towards the main entrance. Richter stood there for a moment, his eyes meeting mine across the vast, now empty hall, a silent, profound understanding passing between us, a shared burden momentarily lifted before he, too, disappeared, absorbed by the gray, somber Athenian street. Weeks later, a desperate message, scribbled on a tiny piece of paper and discreetly slipped into a borrowed copy of Homer that Richter had returned, reached my hands. It was from a contact in the resistance, a group of young Jewish children, orphaned and starved, needed immediate, safe passage out of the city to be hidden in a freighter bound for Turkey. They were being held in a derelict warehouse near the docks, but the German patrols in that area were particularly heavy, relentless. It was an impossible mission, far too dangerous for anyone, let alone a lone archaeologist. I felt the familiar, cold knot of fear tightening in my stomach, the crushing weight of my loneliness. How could I possibly do this alone? I thought of Thalia, my vibrant sister, her innocent face tracing the lines of ancient myths, her dreams of faraway lands. I thought of my parents, their unwavering spirit, their belief in humanity's goodness. I thought of Richter's quiet, unsettling gaze, a beacon of unexpected humanity in the relentless darkness, reminding me that even in the enemy there could be compassion, driven by a surging wave of desperate emotion, the raw ache of love for lost innocence, the sharp sting of fear for my own life, and an indomitable will to act. I had to try. Under the deepest, most impenetrable cover of night, I prepared. I used my knowledge of the city's ancient, hidden tunnels and forgotten passages. Routes only an archaeologist who understood the city's layered past, its very foundations, would know. I slipped out of the museum, not through the grand front doors, but through a forgotten, rarely used service entrance, its lock stiff with disuse. The journey to the docks was harrowing, a nightmare descent into the city's underbelly. I navigated the dark, occupied streets, my small figure blending into the deepest shadows, narrowly avoiding patrols. My heart, a frantic drum against my ribs, threatening to burst. The cold, empty miles stretched before me, each one a testament to my isolation, to the sheer, terrifying scale of my task. As dawn approached, a thin, icy light creeping tentatively over the Athenian rooftops, painting the sky in cold hues of gray and pink. Exhausted and trembling from the bitter cold and pervasive fear, I reached the warehouse. Inside, I found the children huddled together, their eyes wide with terror and hunger, their small bodies shivering. As I led them out through a hidden passage I discovered, a lone figure stepped from the deepest shadows. Dieter Klein, seemingly on a routine patrol. He spotted us. My breath hitched in my throat, a silent gasp of terror, my heart plummeting. I expected immediate capture, the brutal end for us all. Instead, Dieter's gaze fell, not on me, but on the terrified, starving children, then to my own determined, exhausted face. He said nothing, his face impassive, revealing nothing of his inner turmoil, but simply stepped aside, his movement subtle, almost imperceptible. He gestured with a slight, almost imperceptible tilt of his head towards a less guarded alleyway that led directly to the docks. A path he knew would bypass the main checkpoint. He averted his gaze then, as if this silent act of profound defiance, this small, dangerous rebellion against his own command, would be too much for him to witness directly, too dangerous to acknowledge overtly. I paused, a silent, profound understanding passing between us in that fleeting moment, a shared, desperate humanity in a world consumed by brutal, senseless conflict. I led the children past Dieter, slipping into the pre-dawn mist, my heart thumping with a complex mix of fear and overwhelming gratitude. I reached the freighter, secured the children's passage with the help of my resistance contacts, and against all odds, my body aching with exertion, but my spirit soaring with triumph, watched as the ship, a dark silhouette against the burgeoning dawn, slipped away into the vast protective expanse of the Aegean Sea. They were safe. Their lives were salvaged by my immense courage and an unexpected, almost miraculous act of compassion from a man who, by all accounts, should have been my enemy. Months later, the sounds of distant battle grew louder, swelling into a hopeful, terrifying roar. News came, first in hushed whispers, then in triumphant shouts of the Allied liberation of Athens. The fighting was fierce, a joyous, chaotic explosion of freedom and celebration. One morning, amidst the tumultuous festivities, I found a small, unmarked package outside the museum's service entrance, almost hidden. Inside, nestled in straw, was a perfectly preserved ancient Roman coin, a rarity, a genuine treasure. Tucked beneath it was a small, folded note with a single German word, elegantly penned: Wahrheit. Dieter was gone, swept away by the relentless tide of war, his fate unknown, leaving only this quiet, profound testament to his own hidden love for truth and fragile humanity, a silent, poignant farewell, a final shared secret between us. Athens would eventually heal, slowly, painstakingly, from the deep, ugly scars of occupation. I returned to my true work at the museum, resuming my calling, no longer just a custodian, but a guardian of history's soul. The family I yearned for would remain broken, incomplete, a profound absence that would never entirely leave me. But the spirit of resistance, nurtured in the quiet corners of the museum, would bloom anew, stronger than ever. I would never forget the suffocating loneliness I had carried, the raw, visceral emotion of my constant fear, the profound love that had driven me through the darkest hours, and the silent, utterly unexpected compassion of a stranger on the other side of the conflict. The museum, once just a building filled with artifacts, would forever stand as a silent witness to a courage born of desperation, and a precious secret kept safe through the darkest of times. Its quiet halls now echoing not just with scholarly murmurs, but with the vibrant, enduring truth of history forever free.